In Africa. Speaking on day 2 of the Africa Climate Summit, Ruto further proposed the introduction of carbon tax to deal with the effects of climate change.
Day 2 of the Africa Climate Summit. Heads of state and government thronging KICC to deliberate on measures to counter climate change. With the African continent facing adverse effects of climate change, despite contributing just 3% of global emissions, President William Ruto lamented over African countries being forced to divert development funds to curb the effects of climate change.
Many of our countries are headed into debt distress because of climate change. Let's be honest. And because of climate change, we are forced to divert resources that are meant for economic growth into dealing with the effects of climate change. I've had to increase resources meant for school feeding from 1.5 million children in school under school feeding. We've had to scale up this year to 4 million kids in school to be put under school feeding, and we've had to rearrange the budget to provide for that.
Despite the surging cost of living across the globe, the head of state noted that African countries use between 5 to 15% of their GDP to counter climate change.
We don't want to die in this continent. We don't want to die of debt, but we also don't want to die of poverty. That is why we must have a conversation around multilateral development banks and concessional financing and how we can finance our economies using resources that do not punish us.
With the various industries on the spot over emissions, President Ruto proposed the introduction of carbon tax in a bid to discourage emissions and fund other development projects.
We believe it is time to have a conversation about carbon tax. We believe it is the only way, it is among the ways that we can raise additional and adequate resources for us to finance our development. And while we are thinking about financing, for us in Africa, 3 things are very important. As they say in Kenya, mambo ni matatu. Number 1, speed. It takes inordinate to access any meaningful resources. Number 2, it requires scale. And number 3, affordability, so that we all pay the same.
Sultan Al Jaber, the president of COP28, on his part, noted that funds must be made available to actualize the summit's resolutions, with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres calling on large emitters to take responsibility.
And the key to making this happen is, of course, finance and finance and finance. This finance must be made available. This must be made accessible. And this finance must be made affordable.
And the largest emitters must lead the charge in line with my Climate Solidarity Pact and acceleration agenda.
Ian Keitani, Look Up TV.